Welcome to the meeting. Common Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. Pursuant to the standing orders, members are attending in person, in room, and remotely using the Zoom application. Before we continue, I'd like to ask all in-person participation to consult the guidelines written on the cards on the table. These measures are in place to help prevent audio and feedback incidents and to protect the health and safety of all participants, including the interpreters. You'll also notice a QR card which links to a short awareness video. I'd like to make a few comments for the benefit of all members. Please wait until I recognize your name before speaking or ask a question directly by a member. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you're not speaking. For those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either Floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use your earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, November 24th, 2025, the committee is commencing its study of Supplementary Estimates B 2025-26. With us today is the Honourable Heath MacDonald, Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, joined by officials from the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food and the Canadian Food Agency. Each party will have up to 5 minutes. The Minister will have up to 5 minutes for opening remarks, and then we'll proceed with questions. Minister and your colleagues, welcome back to the committee. This is your second time. We appreciate you being here. I'll open up the floor to you, Minister.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to be here. Hello, everyone. Bonjour. It's been a busy few weeks since we last met. Just after our meeting, I had a great trip to British Columbia. I connected with farmers and food processors from a wide range of sectors, including fruit growers, greenhouse farmers, and value-added food processors, also including a vitamin maker that exports to 45 countries. I was also able to sit down with Minister Papam to look at the BC's priorities for the next policy framework, which begin in 2028. At the end of October, I led a mission to China. As you know, China is our number 2 customer for agriculture and agri-food and seafood. We work to strengthen the presence and partnership in China and to continue to recalibrate the relationship. I have to say our Chinese hosts were very receptive, and we had some open and honest discussions. We were able to listen to our stakeholders and see if the opportunities and challenges firsthand. It's so important to meet in person, to put a face to a name, and to build those relationships. In Beijing, I had the opportunity to officially open a Canadian Meat Advocacy Office, which will give Canadian producers boots on the ground to connect directly with our customers and to meet their needs. It was great to see firsthand how our Canada brand for quality continues to grow in China. We also met with senior Chinese officials, including the Chinese minister responsible for general admission of customs for China, which is their equivalent of CFIA. I raised the serious market access issues that we still have with China, including the tariffs on our canola, seafood, pork, and peas. One positive sign was their willingness to restart the work of the bilateral technical working groups, which is a critical step to be able to address regulatory barriers. I was there just after the Prime Minister's successful meeting with President Xi and during Minister Annan's visit. Along with my Cabinet colleagues, I'm also committed to keeping the conversation going while looking for ways to support our producers, processors, and exporters. At the same time, we continue to help all farmers cope with financial challenges due to market disruptions, increased costs, and other challenges. Last week, I was honored to speak at the 101st UPA Congress in Quebec City. I was able to have a roundtable with producers, tour the Ideal Cam facility, and visit Laval University to see the important work they're doing in science and research in the agriculture and agri-food space. Outlined in these estimates, we are investing $108 million to enhance the Ag Stability Program, increasing the compensation rate for farmers from 80% to 90%, and raising the payment cap per farm from $3 million to $6 million. The Ag Stability improvements are part of an envelope in Budget 2025 totaling more than $639 million, over 5 years. $75 million for the agri-marketing program to enhance, diversify, and promote products to new markets. $97.5 million over the increase the advance payment program's interest-free limit to $500,000 for canola advances for the 2025 and 26 program years. $372 million to establish a biofuel production incentive to support the stability and resilience of domestic producers in biodiesel and renewable diesel. In addition, Farm Credit Canada is launching a trade disruption customer support program to make available $1 billion in new lending to help reduce financial barriers for the Canadian agriculture and food industry. We also responded to the cattle sector in making pasture-related feed cost eligible under ag stability and are seeking the required consensus from other jurisdictions. And to help producers meet their labor needs, Budget 2025 proposes to provide $307 million in the Youth Employment and Skills Strategy to provide employment, training, and other support to about 20,000 young people a year, including ag. The industry was also very positive about other measures in Budget 2025. Cancellation of the proposed increase in the capital gains inclusion rate so family farms can continue their succession. A proposed investment of $5 billion over 7 years to create the Trade Diversification Corridors Fund to strengthen supply chains and unlock new export opportunities. $76 million to help the CFIA to support digital trade tools, replacing paperwork and cutting red tape for our agri-food exporters. $32.8 million to help the CFIA secure, expand, and restore market access for Canadian agriculture. A new strategic exports office, nearly $186 million for the new Buy Canadian policy that focus on made in Canada products. Mr. Chair, our government has been putting Canadian farmers and processors and agribusinesses at the heart of nation-building efforts. Every time the government invests in agriculture, we'll do so in a way that strengthens our farm businesses, our jobs, our supply chains, and our food security. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much, Minister. We'll go to the Conservatives first for 6 minutes. Mr. Barlow.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, the last time you were here, you gave us a vocal support, I think your second time publicly, that you would support the emergency use application from Alberta and Saskatchewan on strychnine. It's now been more than 2 months since Alberta and Saskatchewan have submitted their emergency use application, and yet they have not heard a response. I'm hoping today that you can let us know on which date you will finalize the approval of those applications. So we've certainly heard from ag retailers and municipalities, agriculture service boards, that to source the strychnine, they need an answer as quickly as possible. On what date will your support for this application be official?
Well, I think, Mr. Barlow, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Sorry. And I think I stated clearly that I would support the application and support it through Agri-Food and Agri-Canada. The final decision doesn't lie with me. I said bluntly and I said publicly many times that I would support the initiative, and all I can do at this point in time is I can reinforce my commitment to ensure that Department of Health, who's fully responsible of this regard, continues to look at this in an expeditious way, and I fully understand.
Okay, thanks, Minister. So to that, you're going to be like every other Liberal agriculture minister, and you're just going to do what you're told rather than advocating for farmers and making sure that you have a voice at the cabinet table, which is very frustrating. I think all of us were hoping for something new. You also were, when you were with us before, you talked about the Prime Minister saying that he wants an economic lens put on everything. When we also had CFIA and PMRA officials here, and we asked them, are you going to listen to the government's mandate that you have also supported in the election platform, as Conservatives did, that there needs to be an economic lens and an idea of food security when it comes to decisions of CFIA and PMRA? CFIA and PMRA officials said there's no need for them to change their mandate. They think this is already happening, but I think we heard from every single stakeholder during a red tape reduction study that that certainly is not the case. Are you going to make sure that PMRA and CFIA have an economic lens and a food security lens on every decision they make?
I think it's extremely important, and I make reference to the USDA. I think they do that as well. I think first and foremost we need to reassure, because as I traveled around the world and talked about export. Food safety is number one with all the countries that we're dealing with, all our trading partners. I will endorse the economic lens without a doubt. I've been talking about it. I will continue to talk about it, and I will continue to push CFI and PMRA. It has to happen on the decisions that they're making.
Thank you. Your department gave $8.5 million to the failed cricket farm that was declared bankruptcy, but it was recently sold. How much of the $8.5 million did your department recoup from the sale of that operation?
I'm not as familiar with that file maybe as I should be, but the cricket farm situation was before my time, but I'll certainly look into it and get back to you on it.
Also, Farm Credit Canada gave them $40 million. I'd like to know how much Farm Credit Canada recouped of that $40 million from this failed project. And speaking of Farm Credit Canada, we recently saw in the media that the CEO of Farm Credit Canada has billed taxpayers well over almost $315,000 in travel expenses. Just to put that in perspective, that's 3 times the amount that the Agriculture Minister has charged taxpayers for travel expenses. Do you support the immense travel expenses that the CEO of Farm Credit Canada is charging to the taxpayer?
Well, I seen this story, and I think the paraphrase around the story is not something that I likely would have used, but I will say this. I've traveled to many provinces, including Alberta, where we have over about $8 billion from Farm Credit Canada invested. I was in Quebec last week, and it's about $6.1 billion. And I think it's extremely important to understand that, or to remind people how important Farm Credit Canada is to ranchers and producers across this country. I hear it all the time, and I will continue to work and see what the relevance is of the story that came out, and have an opinion at that time. But I can tell you,
thanks, Minister.
FCC is really important.
Appreciate you getting back to us on that. But again, we've been getting a number of emails and calls from FCC employees who are very frustrated with the leadership of the current CEO, and this is just one aspect of it. We have transcripts, which are now also in the media, that in a recent discussion with staff, she was asked which politician or which leader did she admire the most, and she said Fidel Castro for his commitment and his courage to his values. Do you believe that that is the value that Farm Credit Canada should be sharing with farmers and agriculture stakeholders across Canada? This is a person who represents us not only nationally but internationally. Do you think that coincides with the values of Agriculture Canada?
No, and I think certainly.
Well, will there be repercussions to the CEO of FCC?
Well, again, I think the full story has to come from fruition, and to make a statement on it without knowing all the details would be unfair to the general public, the farmers that are involved in FCC, and the administration. But I will say this, that FCC plays a vital role in the success of farmers across this country. So I want to ensure that everything we do is we're doing the right thing with the farmers and producers first. And we'll certainly look into the administration accusations.
Thank you, Minister.
We're going to go to the Liberals for 6 minutes. MP Danduran.
Merci beaucoup. Merci. Thank you, Minister, for being with us today. We very much appreciate that you're here to answer our questions. And this introduction give you some time to set up your earpiece.
English, because I really need this answer from you for my constituents. So supply management is vital in my riding. It helps support our local ecosystems in every region. So can you confirm that the government intends to continue protecting it in the face of external pressures, particularly from the U.S.?
Certainly, right from the get-go, our Prime Minister has been very clear that supply management is not on the table. I spoke to 500 delegates in Quebec last week. I was asked a question from the floor, and I gave the same answer, that we're going to, it's non-negotiable, and we're going to fight tooth and nail for supply management. I come from a province of 175,000 people, and we have about 140 dairy farms. So it's extremely important to my province as well. So it's certainly something that we're continuing to deal with.
Thank you very much, and I'll resume in French now. There's also a big pork industry in my region, the pork industry has also been impacted by certain external threats. Could you indicate to us what the government has done to support the pork industry?
Look, we're continuing to work on diversification of our exports, and the pork industry leads the way. They're in likely every country that I visited now. They're certainly established in that country and have access to, looking for access for more market share. So we'll work alongside the pork industry. I believe the pork industry is a very solid sector in relevance to being in other countries and knowing exactly the capacity that they have to be in those countries. And I think every trade mission that I've been on so far, the pork guys have been standing shoulder to shoulder with me, representatives from Quebec as well.
Merci. Et parlant de mission.
And thank you. And speaking of foreign missions, could you give us an update on the Indo-Pacific strategy and what's been happening with our Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada office in Manila?
The Ag-Food office in Manila has been very strategic. I can tell you when I was there, the connections that they have and the opportunities that they're raising and awareness on the Canadian product for market share is exponential in many aspects. It's certainly put a lens on the opportunities for Canada to be in that area. The bilateral agreement's the first bilateral agreement that an ASEAN country has signed with Canada. We're excited about it, and I think the potential for more growth in that area with a middle class that's growing with more disposable income and value added on the pork side too, especially in the protein side. So it's certainly something that we look forward to.
Merci.
Thank you. And in the 2025 budget, there's a lot of talk about supply chain resilience, and we know how important this is for the agricultural sector. Are there specific investments which are planned for agricultural infrastructure, regional transformation, and what is being done to support small businesses which don't necessarily export in all cases?
It's certainly, when you talk about the infrastructure side of things, I think if you take even the Port of Montreal with COSUR, I think that's how you pronounce it, Port COSUR. I mean, that's a trickle-down effect to all suppliers, all farmers at every level. And I think it's important that, to get goods to market, we need to be more adaptable, and we need to be quicker, obviously. So I think every time we invest in a port, whether it's Port of Churchill or Vancouver or the rails, I think it's extremely important for agriculture. It's been a long time coming as far as I'm concerned from what we're reading and understanding about it. So I think anything that we can do as far as making export easier is certainly something that we'll continue to do, and I look forward to some of these national bill projects.
Merci. Et vous avez...
Thank you. Just this week, you met farmers from the Union des producteurs agricoles in Quebec, the UPA. Could you tell us a bit about what you discussed in your exchanges with the Quebec farmers?
I think trade was certainly something that come up several times in the Q&As that I had with them. Input costs is certainly something. Climate change, they're always concerned about. Farmers are out in front of climate change, and I think that was front and center as well. And support, and I think communication. I think to deliver the message that how important farming is to the economics of this country. And I think sometimes farming gets pushed to the side of a desk, and I don't think it should. Certainly when it's 7% of our GDP and 1 in 9 jobs, it's something that we as a government, but we, as I told them as well, association, farmers are humble, they're resilient, but sometimes humbleism doesn't get you that far. So they need to shout it from the rooftop as much as they can as well, to ensure that the public understands, how tough it is to be a farmer.
Thank you very much. 6 minutes, Mr. Lemieux.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here, Minister. I'd like to talk to you about the advance payment program. Yves Ferron was at the UPA Congress during your speech, and during the question period that followed, the cereal producers took the floor to ask when your government will indefinitely and permanently increase the APP payments to $350,000. Your answer only concerned temporary to $500,000 for canola and $250,000 for other crops. So my question is clear. When will our producers no longer have to take the floor at their national event to ask the same question each year? When are you going to make this permanent? This is also a very important question for us in Abitibi-Témiscamingue.
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question.
I think there's an opportunity just around the corner in the new policy framework, and I think I addressed that in my response to that question, and it was relevant to now's the time to if we're going to make changes. We're starting in January, Deputy, I think it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're trying to expedite the new policy framework, and I think having those voices at the table, the UPA, Martin Caron, we talked about this and ensuring that they have a voice, and to come with their ideas and see what we can do to satisfy them. And then, of course, it's not regional. Of course, it's Canada wide. So we got to ensure that everybody has their input and they're consistent and everybody can agree to it.
Merci pour votre réponse.
Thanks for the answer. That creates a bit of hope, and I hope producers will react the same way. During exchanges last week with the biological production organization, Yves Perron heard that the government might consider eliminating the National Standards Office to save some money. We also know that the biological standard is among those that are regulated by this office. Could you clarify your intentions and those of your government in this regard?
I'm not sure if I clearly understood the question. Sebastian, could you repeat?
Selon vous, l'avenir
Is the future of the Canadian General Standards Board guaranteed, because we know that they're the ones who regulate biological standards?
The organics. Yes, certainly. We had a good exchange on the organics, and certainly I think we fund that every 5 years. I think it's $500,000 if I remember correctly, and it's something that they've asked for to make it permanent, and I think that is certainly an opportunity for us to show some support to the organics. I think there's a real opportunity for that market to expand and grow. So I think that's something that we would consider definitely.
on sait que le gouvernement
We know that the government has let the industries self-regulate for a long time in terms of the range of varieties, and it caught up by agreeing to finance the organic standard. We know what this can lead to: a loss of neutrality, a standard that can fall under the influence of the big players, a difficulty meeting the standards, a weakening of participation of small producers, weakening of the credibility of the Organics Canada label in the eyes of consumers. What will be the assistance you provide to the organic sector in terms of non-labeling of cloned production, given that this already has an impact on these producers on the international stage? Will you support the organic sector, given that they've been abandoned around the question of certification?
I think obviously certification is important, and I think we have to take into consideration what certification means to our trading partners as well. So I think, you know what, the policy framework is another place, and I don't want to keep using that as an excuse, but I think it's important that these topics get into that discussion, so everybody has a say. And not only that, but it allows myself to see what across the board, because we have organic farmers in every province in this country, and certification is certainly important, and labeling as well. And it would be good to hear from producers, the general public, obviously, and others in regards to those facts. So it would be something that the policy framework could.
Un des agriculteurs biologiques.
One of the organic farmers in my riding, Daniel Coutu, talked to me about an important problem when it comes to the organic standard. Some shipments are certified organic, but they are not in conformity or they're not in accordance with the standards of other partners. And so the exporting country's standard is not the same as ours, but we apply the organic label, and then often they don't get through aren't able to cross borders. Canada often doesn't even respect its own reciprocity agreements, and this leads to a real undermining of our credibility on the international stage. What measures will be taken when it comes to the organic labeling for these products?
Sebastian, we're willing to look at everything in that regard. We had some good meetings there and some round tables that this discussion come up as well. And it's certainly something that I can follow up with you after, if you wish.
Merci
Thank you.
beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you.
We'll go to the Conservatives for 5 minutes. Mr. Gourde.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here. You made an important visit to Quebec, to the UPA Congress. It's always interesting to follow the question period afterwards. Marcel Papin, president of the Federation from La Naudière, had an excellent question. And because there are serious concerns, the TGV, the high-speed train route, and the expropriation of 40,000 hectares of land, which might not do anything in the end. The government, the Liberal government, or the Prime Minister, plans to move quickly with this, perhaps too quickly, and there are measures that will lead to an expropriation of land. Since you're the defender of agriculture and you're in cabinet to defend farmers, can you guarantee that there will be a fulsome negotiation? It's Quebec, but getting one's lands expropriated really is not acceptable.
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question.
Look, it was a good question from the floor because I've never heard it before. No one's ever approached me on it. So it was something that when we left the building, I said to my staff, we need to dig into this and see. I fully understand land use and the complications around losing land, especially farmland. So we're gonna pursue this. I haven't had the opportunity, as I just got back on Friday night, I haven't had the opportunity to sit down with the Transportation Minister, but I can assure you that I'm going to sit down with the Transportation Minister and have a discussion relevant to this, see if there's any best practices out there around the world that this happened, see if there's something that we could follow up on that could be relevant. I think we need to make sure that farmers are looked after. We did have some farmers say that I don't mind it because I'll be able to rent my land and things like that. So there's a little bit of back and forth, but certainly it was something that was never brought up to me until on the floor, which was good. So.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre, pour assurer qu'on.
Thank you, Minister. We will be following this file very closely with you. Another question really worries me. A study just came out from FCC with figures from statistics that show that the average age of producer, more than 50% of our farmers are more than 60 years old. And unfortunately, there are fewer than 32,000 producers who are under 40. There will be a whole question of succession of $50 billion in the coming years. And there are fewer and fewer young people in the sector and more old people like me. I'm 62. This is a major problem. Has your department started to look at this question carefully and perhaps even find a way to ensure a farm succession? If you look at this huge volume of farming heritage, and never mind what's going to happen over the next 10 years.
It's certainly right across the country. This is an issue, and it's something that governments at all levels, provincial, federal, municipal, have to consider. I think, I met last week, actually, before I left for Quebec with the Youth Council. The chair of that Youth Council is actually from Quebec, a dairy farmer family. I was intrigued by some of the education that these kids have, and they want to be in the agriculture field. And there's opportunities in agriculture now. I think we have to do a better job of telling the story about innovation and technology, plant science, genomics, to talk in the same breath as agriculture and farming. I don't think that happens enough. There was a young guy there that grew up in downtown Toronto and wants to work in agriculture. So those are some of the things, and I know the budget 2025, we put little over $300 million, $307 million for the youth employment and skills strategy. I know we changed some tax regimes in regards to transfers. Yeah.
Deux petites questions peut-être.
Two short questions. The APP, the committee is here to help you with the APP. If you can put together a study, we'd love to put one together, because many of our people in our ridings are interested in this, and we're prepared to help you to move forward with the APP.
Thank you. Welcome, Minister, and other representatives of the department. It's great to see you here. I want to start off by saying first about you mentioning your commitment to supply management, because in my province of Newfoundland Labrador, where supply management is a huge part of our agricultural industry. But as part of that, these are a lot of small farms, family-run farms. As a province, we've been working on food sustainability, and we've been working really hard on the importance of agriculture as an economic generator, as well as from a food perspective. So from a small farm and rural perspective, what programs of funding will continue to support small farms such as the ones in Newfoundland and Labrador?
Thank you, Mr. Connors. Look, I come from rural PEI. In fact, most programs consider Prince Edward Island as a whole rural province. So I fully understand how important it is to the small communities. They drive the communities, really. So I think it all comes back, a lot of it comes back to the SCAP program. And then whether it be agri-marketing, ag stability, agri-innovate. I think these are some of the things that, smaller farmers can take advantage of, obviously, on a smaller scale, but also some of the science that's being done. For example, at Laval University last week, they have a $10 million budget on science and doing plant-based science, genomic science, bioscience. I mean, these are the types of things that, small-town farmers, rural Canada, are certainly, it's available to them, and they can take full exception of it. Look, working with the provinces and the province of Newfoundland, I mean, developing these relationships from province to province, whether it's Saskatchewan or Newfoundland, I think the federal government's part is to listen, and if there's policies that need to be changed to ensure that those smaller provinces like yours and mine can benefit from them, then certainly that's what we have to do.
And in the the research and everything that ongoes is certainly helping Newfoundland Labrador, because it's helping us to introduce new products to be grown there. You mentioned climate change, and I wanted to ask a question about Newfoundland this year, and a lot of parts of Atlantic Canada were hit by drought, and there was drought in probably most of Canada. Can you tell us a bit more about the agri-recovery programs, or what programs are supporting Canadian farmers through droughts and other climate impacts?
Yes, certainly. Look, our business risk management programs have come up several times in my travels, and it's certainly something that will be front and center. It came up at our national ministers meeting in Winnipeg in the summer, and it's something that I think government has to take a look at. And if there's changes need to be made, obviously you need the partnership of all the provinces. But ag recovery, this morning I had an opportunity to sit down with Robert Irving, and we were talking a lot about drought and irrigation and how the federal government can help. So there's certainly lots to do, and I think ag stability in Newfoundland. I know they have drought, and I think there's actually a discussion going on now with the new government, just elected government, back and forth with some of my officials, I believe, and the deputy may be able to tell you more if you need more, but certainly back and forth to see where they're going to land on the ag stability file for those farmers that are hurting because of the drought.
I think I'm running out of time here, but I was going to give you the opportunity to talk about anything that you wanted to talk about that was important for you.
Oh, thanks. It's Christmas. Look, you know what?
I never had enough time.
Yeah, I must admit, I think I've gotten to every province in this country except Newfoundland, Mr. Connors. So, and I know you and I know a little spot called the Trip In that we have to visit when I'm there. So I certainly look forward to visiting some of your producers and farmers in Newfoundland.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next, we'll go to the Bloc Québécois. Mr. Lemire for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Chair. My questions will be for Mr. Yanao. We all read the answer that you provided with respect to fraudulent import of mislabeled spent fowl. The CFIA says there's nothing about traceability or food safety, even though the declaration of entry into the market is itself fraudulent. And you say for this reason that there can't be a recall as required. Why does the CFIA prefer to heal rather than to prevent by using the DNA testing of Trent University? Is it really so complicated?
No, you know what? I had some good meetings early last week with the Chicken Farmers of Canada, and we had a good discussion. And CFIA obviously is sitting right here to my right, your left. So maybe I'll get you to follow up on it. But I will say this: after the meeting, the first of last week, we actually had CFIA go to Trent University to seek out the DNA test to ensure that it's still appropriate. And reserved on the pathogens that they look for. I think it's something that's very serious, and I think we need to find a solution that's compatible, but also ensure that everybody's on the same page in this. Because at this point in time, I can tell you from the discussions I had with different organizations, we're not all on the same page. So it's something that maybe you can follow up to.
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question.
Covered everything. We did meet with Trent University as recent as last week to discuss their views on this, and I think we're open to continuing discussions with industry and all those within the supply chain as it relates to this. I do want to just underscore that this is not a food safety issue. This is really a misdeclaration and tariff issue. And one of the key things that we are doing is working with our colleagues at CBSA, who have taken a significant number of investigations over the last few years and have actually imposed over $370 million in fines. And there should be no concerns as it relates to traceability. We have the appropriate certification from a health and safety perspective. Again, this is not a food safety issue. This is a tariff and misdeclaration issue. But we're open to continue working with Trent and the industry to make sure we do all we can.
Merci.
Thank you.
For 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister and officials, for being here today. In your last appearance, Minister, you were unable to commit to the continuation of the Seasonal Ag Workers Program. Your deputy committed to get back to us, but we have not yet heard as to the status of that program. Are you prepared to commit to the continuation of the SOP program today?
Well, since the deputy committed, I'm going to let him answer your question.
So, thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously, this is not a program on which we lead. The program itself is led through ESDC, but I think, as you know, they are continuing to look at a specific stream for agriculture and fish processing workers. And but I cannot commit to specific timelines or decisions from ESDC. Tom,
Prepared to support the program.
I think we continue to be absolutely clear that that temporary foreign workers are crucial for the operation of the agriculture sector. We've never wavered on that.
Thank you. We'll still wait for your answer on the seasonal program itself. Going on to farm income now, there's a 26% drop in farm income, $3.3 billion in realized net farm income in 2024. Minister, that was before you were minister, so feel free to comment quite openly and specifically as to which policies contributed to that, and I'm going to even help you with that. Industrial carbon tax, would that not be one of the major contributors to the increasing costs at the farm level?
Well, look, you heard me get up in the House and I talk about this a little bit, but based on, I'm not a scientist nor am I an economist, so basically you take your lead from the professionals that are in this field, and if you look at the Canadian Climate Institute, they say it's 0.08% over up until 2030, relevant to the cost that it could have an effect on food on the table. 1, 2, on the farmer could be 0.012% or 0.12% on the farmer. So putting that into context and doing the math, obviously there's very negligible increase in reference to the farm, the family farm. And if you take the OBPS...
Thank you, Minister. So I'm taking you're supporting the increase in the rising cost of the industrial carbon tax.
I'm not supporting... You asked me a question, I'm trying to explain. My reference from it is from the Canadian policy, Canadian Environment Institute, I think it is the way they explain it, and I can get it to you.
Thank you. If you could table that explanation, that'd be
Sure.
great. During the campaign, the Prime Minister was elbows up on carbon border adjustments. Post-campaign, now it's elbows down. Do you support carbon border adjustment mechanisms?
Look, Mr. Epp, or Mr. Chair, we're in a geopolitical war, and at the beginning of this, the European Union said they were going to do carbon border adjustments. That never transpired. And then all of a sudden, carbon border adjustments, you have to be very careful when we're dealing with a triangulation of China and the U.S. and the EU on top of that. I think it's extremely important, but I don't think I would reserve to say that it was elbows down. I think it was very strategic.
Thank you. The Prime Minister actually substituted a rising industrial carbon tax as justification for putting his elbows down. Do you agree?
No.
Thank you. Would you agree that food systems infrastructure is just as important to Canadians as electricity, water, roads, etc.?
Without a doubt.
So may I ask then why Budget 2025 invests $280 billion in infrastructure for roads, bridges, hospitals, broadband, yet zero is targeted for food infrastructure?
You live in the hub of an area that produces a lot of fruit and vegetables, Mr. Epp, and to get those fruit and vegetables to market, we need infrastructure. And if we don't put infrastructure in place, it's deteriorating rapidly. And I think as farmers across this country tell me day after day, if you're going to do anything, invest in the infrastructure. It's going to take time to build it, but if we can't get our products to market, then there's not much use expanding our markets.
If ag is not directly named, can ag access the CIB for funding and
Yes.
value adding?
Yes.
Excellent point. What's the record of the CIB?
Well, the record, we've opened up a new office at CIB, and it's changed quite a bit. So I think you're going to see a lot of changes relevant to the CIB, and that was a discussion that I had this morning actually with Mr. Irving.
Food report actually documents that food prices dropped, or the rate of inflation of food inflation dropped when there's temporary GST holiday. So you remove taxes, food prices go down. Do you agree with that assessment?
Short answer. Of course.
Thank you. Can we remove further food taxes and have the same effect for Canadians?
What food taxes are you referring to?
Industrial carbon tax, Mr. Minister.
Okay, I'm going to stop you guys there. You're 15 seconds over. MP Harrison, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Minister. The recent budget was encouraging. I don't think anyone will be surprised by this. Anytime I see Canada's agricultural role in driving economic growth, I'm pleased. With investments in infrastructure to support agriculture exports, as well as the increase in ag stability, compensation rate from 80 to 90%, these measures are important steps forward. In Ontario, our agricultural sector is incredibly diverse, not only in the size and scale of operations, but also in the types of crops, livestock, and innovative practices. This diversity is also reflected in my riding of Peterborough, which is filled with many generational family farms. This diversity is a strength, but it also means policies must be flexible and responsive to regional realities. I was reminded of this diversity during a recent drive to the Bay of Quinte. Along those country roads, you'll find communities built around small family farms, niche producers and businesses deeply tied to local economies and food systems. Supporting them is critical, not just for food security, but for sustaining rural communities and ensuring agriculture remains a viable career for future generations. Minister, could you share with us what the government is doing to support small producers specifically? How do you see some of the budget measures impacting smaller farms compared to larger operations? And could you also share any initiatives or priorities that will help small producers adapt to challenges that impact the stability of their operations, such as climate change and passing farms down to younger generations?
Well, I think in your question, you actually you answered some of it in what the government's trying to do. And look, yes, there's a difference between small and large farmers and producers, but really a farmer is a farmer is a farmer. They want to be prosperous, they want to be sustainable, and they want to be generational, most likely. So I think some of the programs that we introduced into the budget and the increase to some of the programs at this point in time for what we're going through may be different in a year's time or 2 years' time. But for this point in time, I think from what I've heard from whether it be small producers or larger producers was trade diversification was one, infrastructure two, continue with our science programs, ensure that we streamline our science programs and ensure that we're not duplicating, bring more people together as far as what's expected of the federal government, but what's expected of our academias, what's expected of, Gen Canada or Seeds Canada or the Gate in Winnipeg. I think it's extremely important that we, get everybody on the same page, because I think agriculture could be a lot stronger than it is. I think it's extremely important to the economics of small towns, but as Canada as a whole. So, I think in the transportation side, investing $5 billion over 7 years to Transport Canada to create trade diversification corridors. When you talk about small farmers, I mean, that's exactly what they need as well. A strategic export office is going to affect them. It's a trickle-down effect, agri-marketing. So I think there's all kinds of programs in there, and there is goodies in there. And, in saying that, the last time there was a budget done, I think agriculture was mentioned 3 times, and this time it's mentioned over 30. And I'm not taking it anywhere away from anybody, but I think people are starting to actually realize how important agriculture is to the economics of this country. And it gives us an opportunity to talk about it and to put it on a pedestal and to make the changes that we need. So, thank you.
Thank you. You already touched on this visiting Trent last week to talk about the DNA test, but I'd also like to talk a little bit more about this because there's some really important research coming out of Trent University, and I actually had an opportunity to visit the Enigma Lab a few weeks ago, and what they're doing will be crucial to help innovation in the agriculture industry. I as well had a meeting with Guelph University a few weeks ago, and you already spoke to this a little bit, but they have students having job offers 18 months before graduation. And I think you explained that clearly, that we need to do a better job of advertising these jobs and the diversity that comes from in the agricultural sector. So if you could tell us more about the role you see innovation and technology playing for producers in the future.
Well, I've said it many times that you could put farming up against any other manufacturing or processing entity in this country, and farming technology and innovation is certainly one that it rises above most of them. And I think it's telling that story and ensuring those, the youth council, for example, talked about the young guy I said that grew up in downtown Toronto. Who would ever dreamt that he wants to be a part of agriculture? So I think, and the other thing is piloting new strategies, I think is important to show examples of how people can be successful in agriculture, whether it's through, and now that we have AI, kids are certainly very interested in AI, and I think that's something that we need to exploit to introduce them to the agriculture field.
So we're running past the 5 minutes here. We're going to do another 10 minutes if you have time, Minister. Do you have? We started 10 minutes late.
Do we have time?
Are you guys okay to stay 10 more minutes for one more round?
Sure.
Okay. We'll go to the Conservatives for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here today. And always good to welcome a fellow Maritimer to committee. Minister, I just want to ask you real quickly, are you aware of the current value of Canada's agricultural trade to the U.S., what that is in dollar figures?
Well, I know the total amount, and is it over $100 billion in exports?
That's significant. That's
1.1.
In exports, wow. And when you combine that with the imports and the exports, the amount of trade that's happening is significant. Have you had a chance to speak with your counterpart in the United States, considering obviously the climate in which we're in and the concerns amongst many of our farmers and producers regarding tariffs and CUSMA negotiations and where that state is? Have you had conversation with Secretary Rollins?
Yes, I have, and I can tell you, Mr. Bagn, that my staff are in constant contact. My chief of staff is in constant contact with her chief of staff as well. The last conversation I had was a very good, almost personal conversation in relevance to agriculture in both the countries and how we're intertwined. We got to the point of talking about her farm and also 4-H in both countries. So it's becoming, and we're seeing a change now. I think in the attitudes in some of the associations, with the letter writing campaign that they've done to the White House, I think we're starting to see some integrity being formed with some of those groups and pushing back hard.
Thank you, Minister. It's important what you're talking there, but I do have a few questions in a short period of time. Given the importance of the U.S. market to Canadian producers and farmers, the competitive challenges posed by CFIA and PMRA delays, can you commit to personally meeting with the U.S. counterparts in the future to address these issues and to make sure that we are putting ourselves in a better position competitively so that our producers have a level playing field and continued open access to that market?
Yeah, I think, look, we fought hard, and I think everybody knows my feelings sometimes about CFIA, no offense, but certainly, they received another $70 million for example, on digitization of certificates, phytosanitary certificates. That is one impediment that I constantly hear. So that is something that we need to move forward on. The regulatory burdens, I totally agree that we need to be on a level playing field at every stand, and this is something as we move forward we'll challenge.
I think that's what's been made very clear, and I'm going to turn to my colleague here in just a moment. One final question. How involved are you in the current renegotiation process with CUSMA? Because we know under the previous Prime Minister Harper, the then Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Ritz, was very intricately involved along with the stakeholders and the farmers. Can we have a surety from you that you will be at that negotiating table along with the producers?
Well, no. I mean, you know what, this is going to be very strategic, and we're living in different times with different presidents of the United States, and I think we have to take that into consideration. Our voice is heard. We're briefed constantly on those
Thank you, Minister.
exchanges.
I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bonk. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Thank you for coming today. We really do appreciate it. But you had mentioned earlier about Strychnine that you were supporting the applications for exemption, and I just wanted to let you know that the clock is ticking on this, that producers will need the product very early in the spring. And I just wanted to know if you will commit to being an advocate for this at the cabinet table to make sure that we have timely access to Strychnine.
My most recent conversation was last week with the Minister of Health, the week before, sorry. And last week pushed up another one because when I was in Saskatchewan, I even had, I think it was the Saskatchewan Cattle Association say they would even implement an applicator. So in other words, they would hire an applicator to put down strychnine. I mean, so I made sure that I wrote a letter, it went to the Minister of Health to ensure that that's a process. So I will continue to advocate at every opportunity.
I have one more question here really quick, and it's about canola tariffs. And this is a huge industry. It's bigger than the steel, aluminum, auto sectors combined in Canada, and we've had absolutely no action on this front when it comes to the removal of tariffs. Who have you met with? When did you meet with them, and what can we expect?
Well, the most recent meeting was with, we formed a working group with canola producers and farmers. So we met last week. We're meeting. It's a committee that was formed out of the Prime Minister's office. So to ensure that they're up to date on everything that we're doing. We're meeting one more time prior to Christmas. So that if that's what you're referencing, that's who we're dealing with. So, okay.
Mr. Connors, 5 minutes.
Thank you. I want to go back. There recently I had the opportunity to tour the Country Ribbon processing and chicken processing facility in Newfoundland, Labrador, and they have introduced some new equipment, chillers and the like, and they've really had the opportunity to expand their market. And they're processing a lot of the chicken now that's produced in Newfoundland and Labrador. And I guess there's other possibilities for them. Can you tell us about how your department is supporting farmers to expand their markets?
Well, I think, Mr. Connors, basically, I mean, everything we've done since, we've been here 7 months, or I've been here 7 months, or whatever it is. I mean, diversifying our market is extremely important, but also, in the same breath, we want to maintain our markets that we presently have. So China, canola, is certainly something that we'll continue to fight for. The U.S., likely our most valuable trading partner. We're going through the CUSMA review. It has to be very strategic, and it has to stay at public airwaves because we see what happens when it doesn't. So it's certainly something that we'll continue to pursue. But I mean, the money that we're putting into trade diversification with a new export office and an export strategy, more money for global affairs, relevant to that, I think says pretty much where right now in this time we are in history is certainly important for us to pursue. And like I said, next year it may be something different, but right now I think it's extremely important that we continue to invest while parallel ensuring that technology and innovation is at the forefront of our industries and sectors.
Thank you. I'm going to share my time with MP Dunn.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Another question in French, Minister. There's a really important issue in the regions that is access to manpower, especially in the farming sector. Could you tell us what's happening with the temporary foreign workers program in the farm sector? Do we continue to support this program?
Certainly. Look, we can't do what we want to do in farming without the support of temporary farm workers. Temporary farm workers play a significant role in all farms processing seafood. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you come from. Quebec, I believe, and you can quote me on or not quote me on these numbers, but I think they take about a third of the temporary farm workers. So there's about 77,000 in this country, and I think it's 25 or 26,000 that are in Quebec. So it certainly shows how important they are there. If we're going to get our product, either off the processing line or out of the field, we need temporary farm workers. And sometimes, we hear questions in Parliament, and you stand up and people respond to them. But every time we talk negatively about temporary farm workers in one aspect or another, I know that I get farmers saying to me, why don't you guys just stop talking about temporary farm workers? That's how important they are to them. They don't want to jeopardize. It's a program that's been around for 50-some years in many different sectors, a lot of them under my portfolio, extremely important, and I think sometimes we as politicians don't do it justice. So if we, I mean, should there be changes? That's up to somebody else, but I can tell you that they're extremely important in this country and not only to this country, but I want to add too that sometimes we forget that we're actually trying to get our products into, so Mexico is a good example, trying to get our products into Mexico. Temporary foreign workers coming to Canada are very important to the Mexico country as well. So we have to remind ourselves every once in a while, it's not just our country that's benefiting from this, it's the country, our trading partners that are benefiting from us. So if we're in negotiating, we don't want to be saying that we don't want your workers anymore.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Lemire. 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Ministre, vous savez, on est écouté.
Minister, we're followed. The work we do here in committee is listened to by the general public, and I learned that the answer you gave me about the fraudulent import of spent fowl in relation to the DNA test and Trent University, and that the meeting did not go well because the trust had been eroded when the vice president of the CIA said, of the CFIA said that there would be no test, that the import would enter the product would enter the market without a verification. Is this the formal position of the department? Have you just let these guys fall by the wayside around this question?
Well, to be quite honest, I was in La Belle Province up until the weekend, so I haven't been briefed on that, but that's certainly, I hope, not the end result of that meeting.
I'm happy to hear that. On another issue, there was a meeting with you several months ago following your appointment, and when we met, I just want to say how important that meeting was for me and my region when it comes to development research in Abitibi-Temiskaming. As you know, agriculture in Canada is also done in northern areas. It's done in clay soil, and for many years, a research program was financed in Kapuskasing. In the last 15 years, this funding has dropped to zero. But fortunately, someone has taken this up. It's the University of Quebec at Temiskaming, and we're wondering why the Canadian department is not willing to set up a pilot program with the university to fund research on farming in northern areas, and that the project in Kapuskasing could be useful to develop this type of farming in Quebec, including in Abitibi-Temiskaming. And so I ask, would you be willing to meet the people from the university in the coming weeks, since we're now entering the holiday season? This would be a good opportunity to meet them. Thank you.
And like I said earlier, being at Laval University last week, they have $10 or $11 million that they get in research for science on many different issues, but a lot of it plant-based. And we partner right alongside them, so I would, more than welcome to sit down. Yeah. Merci.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. Minister, we appreciate your time, and thank you for extending your time a bit. I know you were here pretty much on time, ready to answer questions, so thank you for the extra 10, 15 minutes. We will now suspend for about 5 to 10 minutes to go from public into camera for the next part of our meeting. I don't think there's anyone online who is part of the committee, so we'll suspend 5 minutes.
Canada.